Hey everyone, Aaron here from MTGChallengers, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering deck tech. Today I'll be going over a budget build for Gruul Aggro. So ever since we've been covering standard deck techs on this channel, we've been getting requests to do some budget ones. Competitive Magic can be very expensive, so a lot of people out there are looking for a deck that they can do reasonably well with, have some fun with at a local F&M or whatever, but not spend a lot of money. And I think that this deck qualifies very well. So it's a green-red aggressive deck, pretty standard as far as aggressive decks go, focuses on getting out just a ton of creatures and just turning them sideways on your opponent. The great thing about this deck is that green and red have a lot of really amazing commons, uncommons, and cheap rares that are actually very good even up against more expensive decks. You can pick up this entire deck, lands, sideboard, spells, everything for around $40, and it's definitely a great deck for the money. So let's get right into it here. I have 8 1-drops, which consist of 4 Experiment 1 and 4 Rakdos Cackler. So these are arguably the best of the cheap, efficient 1-drop creatures available in the colors, and they do their job well. Experiment 1 isn't just a good standard 1-drop, it's one of the best 1-drops period, especially in a deck like this that scales up in power and toughness really well. It can easily get up to a 3-3 or 4-4 as the game goes on, which makes it amazing for aggressive decks. And the ability to regenerate it is just the icing on the cake, lets you keep it around after a board wipe or removal spell. And Rakdos Cackler, it's not as good as the Experiment, but it's still very respectable. It's versatile in that you can either have a 1-1 that can block or a 2-2 that can't. Usually you want to unleash him and have him be a 2-2 for 1, which is ideal for an aggressive deck, but there is the option to have another blocker, which is nice. Then I have my 2-drop creatures, which consist of 4 Gore-House Chainwalker and 4 Burning-Tree Emissary. Really awesome creatures. They're played even in non-budget decks since they work so well together. The Chainwalker itself is reasonably solid, 3 power for 2 is pretty nice for aggressive decks, and again, the Unleash gives you more options. But where it really shines is when it's paired with the Burning-Tree Emissary. So you can drop an Experiment turn 1, then play Burning-Tree on turn 2 and use the mana to cast the Chainwalker. Not only is it awesome for just getting 2 creatures out in one turn, but it also gives you a 3-3 Experiment 1 on turn 2, which is just amazing. Beyond that, the mana the Emissary produces can be used for basically anything in the deck, including casting more Emissaries, which can then be used to cast more stuff. You can play a Lightning Strike to get rid of their guy, another Experiment 1 or Cackler, or just play it into a 3-drop. There's just a ton of options with the Emissary in this deck, and it's really the thing that takes the deck's aggressiveness to the next level. Moving on up to the 3-drops, I have 4 Fanatic of Xenagos. Just an amazing creature, and probably the only tribute card that's actually constructed playable. No matter what your opponent chooses, the card is fantastic value. It's either a 4-4 Trampler for 3, or a 4-4 Haste Trampler that becomes a 3-3 after the turn, and both of those options are amazing, and really what an aggressive deck is looking for in a 3-drop. The mana cost is also nice in that it's not double intensive in either color, so that makes it all the better. Not much else to say about it, it's just a great value creature. Then I have my other 3-drop, Boon Satyr, a playset here as well. It is a rare, but it's not very expensive at all, and it's a very good card at that. 4 power for 3 is awesome, and having flash is the icing on the cake. It's great against board wipes like Supreme Verdict, since you can bestow it onto a creature and bash in with it, and when they play the Verdict it will fall off and become a creature on its own, so you'll still be left with something. Or you can just flash it in as a creature after the Wrath resolves. Control cards like Supreme Verdict are always a pretty big problem for aggressive decks, so having a playset of a card that works well with it main deck is great. Beyond that, flash is always awesome to have. You can flash it in and bestow it to push through more damage, pump up a blocker to screw up combat math, or flash it in to block something. There are just all kinds of options with this card, and it's great overall. Then I have my 4-drop, as well as the last creature in the deck, Ghor-Clan Rampager, a playset here as well. Absolutely amazing creature for this deck, another one of the power uncommons. Most of the time you'll just be using him as a pump spell, since +4/+4 and trample for 2 mana is just tremendous. It screws up combat math incredibly well, and can sometimes just win you the game outright. But if you don't have a creature to blood rush, or you just need a blocker, you can have him enter as an able-bodied creature as well, which is great for flexibility. So that's it for the creatures. Let's talk about a couple other spells. 4 Giant Growth is awesome for value. I mean, 1 mana for +3/+3 at instant speed is pretty awesome for a common. You can use it in response to a burn spell to save a creature, or pump it up after an attack or block to screw up combat math like with the Rampager. There's just not much more you can ask for out of a 1 mana common. It's simple, but it's still great for a budget deck. And then I have 4 Lightning Strike. It's just an all-purpose removal spell, kills a decent bit of stuff like Voice of Resurgence and Mutavault. It's also more flexible than other removal spells since you can deal the 3 damage to their face, in case you're close to winning and just need to get them to 0. Just a decent all-around spell to have in a red deck. And then I have the mana base, which is very simple. 4 Gruul Guildgates are really nice for budget decks, just to have some fixing that's not expensive. They do come in tapped, but having just 4 of them won't hurt you too much. And then I just have 20 basics, consisting of 12 forests and 8 mountains. So that's the main deck. Pretty simple, but really good, I think. If you do have a little bit more money to spend and want to build this deck and improve it, definitely the first thing you would want to do is to improve the mana base with Stomping Grounds. That would definitely make the deck a lot more consistent and better overall. Also, some amount of Mana Confluence would also be great, since it's fixing that doesn't enter tapped, which can be important. And beyond that, if you could afford to throw in a couple of Mutavaults, you'd have an amazing aggressive mana base. Honestly, beyond that, I can't really say that there's much more I would automatically change out. The cards are commons and uncommons, but they're still amazing. If you sat down with a competitive budget, you would come up with a creature base extremely similar to this one, maybe even the same. But as far as the non-creature spells go, you'd probably want to take out the giant growths and put in some more red removal, like Mizzium Mortars. Also, if you really have some extra money to spend on it, putting in a few Domery Raid would definitely make the deck competitive. There are all kinds of options, but those are the ones I would look into. So that's it for the main deck. Let's take a look at the sideboard. First off, I have 3 Nylea's Disciple, a really nice creature to have up against the aggressive mirror. Life gain is really the way to answer them, and since the deck is more green heavy, this is definitely a nice card to have in the side. I also have 3 Magma Spray. Was just reprinted in Journey to Nyx, and it's a really awesome card up against all the problematic 2 toughness creatures, like Voice of Resurgence and Mutavault, particularly Voice of Resurgence since it exiles it so they won't get the token. 2 copies of Mugging is also decent in the aggressive mirror, as well as the mid-range decks. In the case of the aggressive decks, it will usually kill the creature outright, and up against the bigger creatures that the mid-range decks are going to be playing, it will disable it for the turn and allow you to swing in. Next up, I have 3 Unravel the Aether. Awesome enchantment and artifact removal. Gets rid of all the gods like Thassa, Iroas, and Athreos, and it also eliminates problematic removal like Detention Sphere, which makes it really good for sideboard tech. Then I have 1 Pithing Needle. Great one-of in the side, good against a variety of matchups. Up against control, you can name their planeswalkers like Jace, Architect of Thought, or Elspeth, Sun's Champion to shut down their abilities. Also in the mid-range matchups, it's pretty solid, as you can name things like Pelukranos and Stormbreath Dragon, since it will disable their monstrous abilities. And finally, I have 3 Burning Earth in the side. It's a great rare that's also really cheap. The interesting thing about it is that the fact that you're playing on a budget actually works to its advantage. Since you're just running a bunch of basics and a few Guildgates, this really won't be hurting you at all, but up against all the 3-color competitive decks like Jund, Esper, USA, things like that, it's really going to be hurting them a lot and can really give you the edge over them. So that's it for this deck tech. Be sure to check out our competitive decks and gameplays, and also feel free to suggest other budget builds for us to cover. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the Facebook page, and consider making a donation to support the continuation of this project. Thanks for visiting, and if you like what you see, subscribe for more Magic the Gathering content.